Hi, my name is Terry, and I just want to share with you my testimony on how good God is and how He shows His mercy and His grace and His love towards us. And I want to share my story with you with my son. My son was 25 years old when he went home to be with the Lord. He had been struggling. He had struggled with drugs for many years, probably since the age of about 13. He was off and on struggling with drugs, and at the age of 17, he came to know the Lord at a time when he was sober and off drugs at that time. He was in a group home at the time. And he was sober, and he came to know the Lord, and he was very strong in his faith at that time. He was clean probably at that time for about a year and a half. And then when he came home from there, it wasn't too long after that he got back hanging around with the bad crowd and friends and stuff like that, and he got back into the drugs. And all the while, I was praying and asking the Lord to deliver him and change his heart and help him get his life straight and do better and serve and all of that stuff. And he did for a little bit, and he came home and he was really good, and he was a loving person. But unfortunately, it didn't. Those times weren't long lasting. He just seemed to always find himself stuck with the drug use. So again, I just continued to pray and ask God to deliver him from. So when my son passed away at the age of 25, he was in jail at the time, and he was probably facing some years. He hadn't gone to trial yet, but he was facing some years, and he was using drugs in jail while awaiting his trial. And so when he passed away, I was out of town, and I got a call while I was in Arizona from the medical investigator's office in Albuquerque telling me that my son had passed. And so initially, of course, it was just grieving and getting back home so that I could be at home and do what I needed to do for him. As once we got him all taken care of and services were done and funeral happened and my son was put to rest, then the anger came, and I felt myself being very angry at God because I had prayed for so long that He would deliver him. And so I felt like God had abandoned me. I felt like He had let me down. I felt like He just wasn't there when I needed Him the most. I felt like I trusted His word as far as asking for what our desires were, and as long as we were living in His will, that we could ask anything and it would be done for us. And I didn't feel like that had happened. So I went through a trial. I went through a time of about 2 years, I would say, where I'd get angry at Him, and then I'd feel guilty for questioning Him, and I'd feel guilty for getting mad at Him, and then I felt hurt that He had let me down. So all these different emotions kept coming back and forth and in and out and back and forth. So I had a friend. There was a friend of mine that I used to confide in. In fact, this individual was the one who led me to the Lord back in 1987, and I spoke with him, and I explained to him all that I was feeling, and I didn't know why I was feeling this way, and I'd get mad at myself, and I'd kick myself, and then I'd fear the Lord and say and think, Lord, please don't strike me dead, for being angry with you or for questioning your faithfulness. And so my friend, just listened to me, and he allowed me to cry on his shoulder, and when I told him that I was hurt with the Lord, when I told him that I felt let down by the Lord, um, all these emotions came through, but I never mentioned the fact that I was angry with him. And so then my friend kind of opened my eyes, or helped open my eyes. Actually, it was God who did that. God allowed him to give me the words that I needed to hear, and he was very, very upfront and said, I think you're just angry with him, and it's okay to be angry with God. But you have to let him know that you are and why you're angry with him, he said, so that you can heal. So I think at that point I finally came to a point um, where I sat down and just spoke with God as if he were in front of me and I was looking at him. And I basically told him, yeah, I'm mad. I'm mad because you promised me this, and I'm mad because you didn't deliver him. I prayed for 12 years for you to deliver my son. And let me mention also that about 2 months before my son died, I kind of had an idea of where his future was going to go and what it would look like. Again, I said he was awaiting trial, and he was looking at doing some years in prison. My mother was ill. She wasn't doing well, and she lived in California, and my son was very, very close to my mom. And so all these things were rolling around in my head, and thinking, well, if he does, 10 years in prison, chances are he's going to be in prison when my mom passes, because my mom was already elderly and she wasn't doing well health-wise. And then I thought about other things that might happen while he's in prison, and what that would do to his salvation and his eternal life, and just so many things that could have happened while serving time. And so about 2 months before my son passed away, I could see that he wasn't getting any better as far as the drug use. And so I prayed and I asked the Lord, to have mercy on him and show him grace and love, and that if it wasn't in his plan that he would deliver my son here on earth, that he'd deliver him by taking him home. That I was ready to let him go. So I prayed that probably around in March or April of the year my son died. And I can remember 2 actual incidents of asking the Lord to take him home. But to please, all I asked of the Lord at that point was to make sure that my son truly was saved, and that he truly did know him, and that's where he would go, would be home. And so in May 27th of 2007, my son died in the county jail of an overdose. And again, going back to present day, in about 2009, I was very angry with the Lord, and I was telling him that I had prayed, reminding him that I had prayed for 13 years for my son to be delivered from drugs. And that God would change his heart and change his life and hear me. And I had waited on him, and I had this is what I told God. I said, I waited for you, Lord. You told me to wait on you, and I waited for you. And I prayed, and I asked you to deliver him and to change his life. And at some point, I can't even pinpoint the day. At some point, I felt a peace. And it was the peace of God. And basically what the Lord did at some point was sat me down, and he spoke to my heart, and he said, my child, I did hear you. I did deliver. I did have mercy on you. And I did show you grace. And I showed David grace too. For you see, David isn't on drugs anymore. He has been delivered. And you didn't wait for me, but it was me who waited for you. Waiting on you to give him back to me, to let him go and be ready for me to take him home. That's what I waited for. I could have taken him 10 years ago. I could have taken him 13 years ago. But you weren't ready yet. You would not have survived that loss at that time. So I waited. I waited for you to let him go, because he was always mine. When you were ready, I took him home. And so you see, I do love you. And I do love David. And I showed him mercy. For he doesn't have to go through, he didn't have to go through the loss of his grandmother, whom he loves so much. He didn't have to worry about what prison might do to his heart and harden his heart and cause him to possibly lose his salvation. He's home. He's home with me. And he's been delivered. And that's my story.